Every life eventually arrives at a moment when the next decision becomes a defining hinge, one small turn that swings open a completely different future. These moments rarely look dramatic on the surface. They appear quietly, hidden inside ordinary conversations, unexpected setbacks, sudden opportunities, and seasons of internal discomfort. Yet T.D. Jakes argues in Making Great Decisions that destiny is shaped not by luck, but by the courage and clarity with which we confront these crossroads. Life expands or contracts based on the decisions we make when no one is watching, when fear whispers the loudest, and when change becomes uncomfortable but necessary. Jakes invites readers to recognize that decision-making is not an event. It is a spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and relational process that determines whether we rise into purpose or drift into regret. His message is especially relevant today, in an era where the world changes faster than people can mentally adjust. Industries transform overnight. Relationships evolve under pressure. Economic landscapes shift suddenly, and digital noise makes it harder to hear one's own inner voice. In such a climate, indecision becomes as dangerous as wrong decisions because life will move forward with or without our consent. If this is your first time, subscribe so you don't miss out. Let's continue. From the very beginning, Jakes challenges the assumption that great decisions require perfect conditions. Instead, he insists that they require inner alignment, the harmony between values, intuition, wisdom, timing, and courage. And as we explore the lessons within the book, it becomes clear that every principle builds upon the previous one, forming a powerful, continuous chain of growth. Each lesson leads to the next, the way each step on a staircase lifts a person higher. Miss one, and the climb becomes harder. The power of self-awareness as the foundation of destiny. Every great decision begins with understanding who you are, not who people expect you to be, not who society pressures you to become, and not who you were in a previous season. Many people fail at decision-making, not because they lack options, but because they are disconnected from their identity. Jakes argues that before choosing what to do, you must understand who is doing the choosing. This is why so many people adopt careers they hate, stay in relationships that shrink them, or pursue dreams that were never theirs to begin with. They are making decisions from borrowed identities, parents' expectations, cultural scripts, social media demands, or past insecurities. True clarity begins when you strip all that away and ask, what aligns with my authentic self? A modern example appears in the story of Simone Biles, who made a controversial but courageous decision to withdraw from several Olympic events in 2021 to preserve her mental health. Globally, millions interpreted her choice as weakness, yet her decision was rooted in profound self-awareness. She recognized that no medal was worth her well-being. The world eventually applauded her, but what matters is that she acted from a place of inner truth rather than external pressure. This is exactly the kind of inner alignment Jakes teaches. The courage to choose what honors your identity, even when others don't understand. From an everyday American perspective, consider a young man in Detroit working at an auto plant because his entire family has worked in manufacturing for generations. Yet deep inside, he feels drawn to design and digital engineering. Every day he postpones the decision to pursue a new career because he fears disappointing his family or appearing ungrateful. But until he chooses to honor his inner truth, every major decision he makes will be misaligned. Jakes would argue that clarity of identity is the compass that guides destiny. Without it, all choices feel confusing and heavy. Globally, think of the millions of young Africans who face pressure to pursue prestigious careers like law or medicine, even when their passion lies in tech, agriculture, creative arts, or entrepreneurship. Many suppress their authentic gifts, and as a result, every decision they make later in life feels like wearing someone else's shoes, painful, tight, and restricting. This disconnect produces frustration and stagnation. Jakes insists that the first great decision you must make is the decision to accept your true self, because every destiny flows from authenticity. And once identity becomes clear, another lesson emerges naturally. When you know who you are, you begin to recognize which opportunities are yours and which are distractions. Discerning between opportunities and distractions. In making great decisions, Jakes emphasizes that not every open door is meant to be walked through. Some are traps, beautifully decorated detours that look like destiny but drain your energy, focus, and resources. The challenge, though, is that distractions often come disguised as opportunities. This is why the earlier lesson on self-awareness is vital. When your identity is unclear, everything looks like an opportunity. When your identity becomes defined, distractions become easier to identify. Jakes teaches that decisions must be evaluated not by how attractive they appear, but by how aligned they are with your purpose. An opportunity becomes a distraction the moment it pulls you away from who you are becoming. A global example can be seen in the surge of fast money ventures that appear on social media. From crypto scams to fake investment schemes, millions around the world jump at the chance to get rich quick, only to lose everything. They mistake urgency and glamour for opportunity. But as Jakes explains, true opportunities enhance your character and future. They don't exploit your emotions. In the United States, look at the trend of young professionals switching jobs every few months out of fear of missing out. While mobility is good, impulsive decisions driven by anxiety can harm long-term growth. One may chase a higher salary, only to end up in a toxic environment that damages their mental health. Jakes would argue that discernment asks deeper questions. Does this opportunity align with my long-term purpose? Does it grow me or drain me? Does it bring peace or confusion? From an American small business perspective, imagine someone offered a partnership deal that promises rapid expansion, but with investors whose values clash with integrity. At first glance, the proposal seems irresistible. But if it requires compromising ethics, then it is a distraction, not an opportunity. Great decisions require long-term vision, not short-term excitement. From a global perspective, consider a Nigerian entrepreneur offered a chance to join a powerful political circle that could accelerate his business, but at the cost of engaging in corruption. The offer looks like advancement, but it disconnects him from his core values. As Jakes explains, the wrong decision can elevate you temporarily, but uproot you permanently. Discernment naturally leads to another lesson. You cannot evaluate opportunities alone. You need wise counsel.
The wisdom of seeking counsel. After understanding yourself and learning to distinguish real opportunities from distractions, Jakes emphasizes the importance of surrounding yourself with wise voices. Many of the worst decisions in history, political, corporate, relational, personal, were made in isolation. When people surround themselves with yes men or isolate themselves out of pride, their decision-making becomes distorted. Jakes argues that wisdom often flows through relationships. No matter how gifted or intelligent a person is, blind spots exist. These blind spots are areas where emotion or ignorance clouds judgment. Strong counsel illuminates them. A powerful American example is Steve Jobs returning to Apple after being fired from his own company. What many people overlook is that Jobs didn't return solely because of his genius. He returned because he had spent years receiving counsel, being mentored, learning humility, and allowing other experienced executives to influence his thinking. Apple's revival was not the product of isolated brilliance, but of refined decision-making shaped by wise advisors. Another example is the rise of startups in Silicon Valley. While media celebrates young founders, insiders know that behind every successful founder is a circle of advisors, mentors, and investors who challenge, correct, and refine their decisions. Jake's principle applies strongly here. If you want to go far, you must go with people who can see what you cannot. On a global scale, think of the transformation of Rwanda after the 1994 genocide. President Paul Kagame didn't rebuild the nation through unilateral decision-making. He created councils, think tanks, and advisory groups that studied global models, consulted experts, and implemented long-term strategies. The decision to use collective wisdom led to one of the most remarkable national turnarounds in modern history. This reflects Jake's teaching. Great decisions are too heavy for one mind alone. Wisdom is multiplied in community. In everyday life, counsel is equally crucial. A woman considering marriage may see only the excitement of romance. Her closest friend may notice red flags she's ignoring. A business owner may be emotionally attached to a failing project. His mentor may see a better path. A student may choose a course of study based on peer pressure. A teacher may recognize a different gift entirely. But Jakes makes an important distinction. Counsel must be wise counsel, not just any opinion. Not everyone is qualified to speak into your destiny. Some people advise from fear, jealousy, or limited vision. This leads naturally to the next lesson. After seeking counsel, you must learn to filter voices. Mastering the art of filtering voices. In a noisy world overflowing with opinions, advice, and digital chatter, not every voice deserves equal weight. Jakes teaches that great decisions require selective listening. Some voices guide you, others guilt you. Some inspire you, others imprison you. Discernment is the ability to recognize which voices align with your future and which ones belong to your past. Social media has made this lesson more urgent than ever before. Globally, people are overwhelmed by influencers, celebrities, commentators, and strangers who project their opinions loudly and confidently. Many people now struggle to hear their own thoughts because they have allowed too many external voices to drown out their inner wisdom. The United States witnessed an extreme example of this during the GameStop stock frenzy in 2021. Thousands of individuals invested based on social media hype rather than personal understanding or professional advice. Some made money, many lost money, but the lesson remains clear. When you let random voices guide your decisions, the outcome becomes unpredictable. In family context, voices can be even more powerful. A young woman may be discouraged from starting her own business because older relatives fear she might fail. A man may be pressured into staying in a dysfunctional relationship to avoid shame. These voices are familiar, but not necessarily wise. Jakes emphasizes that emotionally charged voices often reflect other people's fears, not your purpose. And once you filter voices correctly, you begin to recognize that decisions become clearer when your inner world is quiet enough to hear God's guidance, leading to the next lesson. Learning to trust divine and inner guidance. After filtering out distractions and unnecessary voices, Jakes teaches that great decisions require a deeper source of guidance, the partnership between divine inspiration and inner intuition. You cannot rely solely on logic, emotion, or advice. You must also listen to the subtle voice within, the spiritual compass that nudges you towards the right path. This lesson builds naturally from the previous ones because intuition becomes clearer only after identity is grounded, distractions are removed, and external voices are filtered. Many people struggle to hear divine guidance not because God is silent, but because their lives are too loud. A recent American example of inner guidance at work is the rise of Ava DuVernay, the filmmaker behind Selma and When They See Us. She began her career in public relations and did not pick up a camera until age 32. Logically, it seemed like the wrong time to switch careers. But internally, she felt a deep, persistent calling toward storytelling. She followed that voice, despite age, fear, and uncertainty, and today she is one of the most influential filmmakers in the world. Jakes would point to her story as proof that divine direction often contradicts human logic, but aligns perfectly with destiny. Another global example is the story of Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba. Before success, he faced multiple rejections from Harvard, from employers, from investors. Logically, he should have quit. But he had an intuitive belief that the internet would transform China. His intuitive conviction allowed him to persist until the world caught up with his vision. Jakes teaches that divine guidance is often subtle, a sense of peace, a persistent conviction, a sign that aligns repeatedly, or a deep sense of discomfort when something is wrong. Great decisions come from listening to this inner direction, even when it leads away from comfort. But trusting inner guidance naturally leads to the next challenge, fear. No matter how clear a decision feels, fear tries to interfere. And this leads to the next major lesson.
Overcoming the paralysis of fear. Fear is the silent enemy of destiny. It appears every time a major decision is required. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. Jakes argues that courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward despite it. This lesson flows naturally from the previous one because once divine guidance gives clarity, fear becomes the last barrier between intention and action. Many people know what they should do. They simply fail to do it because fear paralyzes them. The world saw a powerful demonstration of overcoming fear during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. Healthcare workers, delivery drivers, scientists, and essential workers had to make daily decisions in uncertain and dangerous environments. Their courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite risk. This reflects Jakes' teaching. Destiny requires bravery. In personal life, fear often shows up during transitions. Leaving a toxic relationship, changing careers, starting a business, moving to a new country, or stepping into leadership. Jakes observes that fear will always suggest that staying where you are is safer than moving into the unknown, even when the unknown is where your purpose lies. An American example is Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx. She had no background in business, no investors, no mentorship, and no guarantee of success. What she had was a decision. She refused to let fear stop her from pursuing an idea she believed in. That decision eventually made her the youngest self-made female billionaire in America. Globally, millions of immigrants demonstrate this same courage daily, leaving familiar environments to pursue uncertain opportunities in foreign lands. Their decisions require facing fear head-on. Jakes insists that fear becomes weaker each time you act in spite of it. And once fear is conquered, you become capable of making not just isolated decisions, but consistent character-based decisions, leading to the next lesson. Character as the true lens for decision-making. Once a person confronts fear and chooses movement over paralysis, Jakes introduces a deeper stabilizing truth. Great decisions must flow from strong character. While intuition, opportunity, and courage all contribute to decision-making, character determines whether your decisions will sustain you or destroy you. Character is the invisible infrastructure that stabilizes the weight of your future. This lesson grows naturally from the previous ones because once divine guidance gives clarity, fear becomes the last barrier between intention and action. Many people know what they should do. They simply fail to do it because fear paralyzes them. The world offered countless examples of what happens when people rise without corresponding character. Political scandals, corporate fraud, relationship breakdowns, and moral collapses. The news is filled with leaders who rose quickly and fell dramatically because their decisions were not rooted in internal strength. An American example is the downfall of Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos. She had vision, courage, opportunity, and influence, but she lacked the character to maintain transparency, honesty, and accountability. Her decisions were driven by image instead of integrity. This resulted in one of the most significant fraud cases in U.S. history. Jakes would argue that the absence of character eventually exposes itself, no matter how impressive the climb. Contrast this with Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks, who built one of the world's largest coffee empires with a foundation of values, employee welfare, and ethical sourcing. His decisions consistently demonstrated responsibility, fairness, and care for workers. As a result, even in economic downturns, his leadership earned trust, loyalty, and long-term success. Character created sustainability. Globally, consider the story of Nelson Mandela. Many leaders have risen to power through charisma or opportunity, but Mandela's decisions were guided by extraordinary moral discipline. After 27 years in prison, he chose forgiveness over vengeance, unity over division, and service over personal gain. His decisions became a blueprint of how character stabilizes power. Jakes explains that when character becomes the root of decision-making, success becomes long-lasting and relationships become healthier. And from character naturally emerges the next essential principle: timing. The critical role of timing in great decisions. Timing, Jakes argues, is the silent partner of every powerful decision. You can make the right decision at the wrong time and still fail. You can pursue a dream too early, forgive too late, invest too quickly, or hold on too long. Great decisions require not only what to do and why to do it, but also when to act. This lesson connects directly to character because character develops patience, discipline, and restraint. Without these traits, timing becomes difficult. People often delay decisions because of fear, or rush decisions because of emotion, but both extremes sabotage destiny. Timing is crucial in business, relationships, finance, career growth, and personal transformation. A clear American example is Netflix. The company's rise was not just a result of innovation, it was also a triumph of perfect timing. In 2000, Reed Hastings offered to sell Netflix to Blockbuster for $50 million. Blockbuster rejected the offer because the timing didn't match their vision. But Hastings understood where technology and consumer behavior were heading. Instead of rushing or retreating, he timed his decisions systematically, first transitioning from DVDs to online streaming, then expanding globally, then creating original content. Each decision reflected strategic timing. Today, the company is worth over $200 billion. Individual life decisions demonstrate timing just as profoundly. A person may feel ready to start a business, but if the market is not ready, or if personal finances are unstable, they may collapse under the pressure. Conversely, a person may stay too long in a comfortable job and miss the window to grow. Globally, timing shapes nations and economies. The United Arab Emirates positioned itself as a tourism and economic hub at a moment when the world needed new travel destinations and global connectivity. Singapore rose as a financial powerhouse by making timely decisions during periods of global trade expansion. Their leaders understood that destiny responds to timing. Jakes teaches that timing requires spiritual sensitivity and emotional maturity, which naturally leads to the next lesson. You cannot make great decisions with an unstable emotional life. Emotional maturity is the balancing force of wise decisions.
This lesson flows from timing and character, because strong character helps regulate emotions, and good timing requires emotional steadiness. Decisions made in emotional extremes, anger, loneliness, desperation, excitement, jealousy, often end in regret. People frequently choose partners, resign from jobs, start arguments, spend money, relocate, or commit to obligations based on emotional highs or lows. But once the emotion fades, they are left with consequences. An American example is seen in the pattern of celebrities who marry emotionally but divorce quickly. The relationship begins with intensity, but lacks the maturity necessary for sustainability. Hollywood is filled with such examples, but the principle applies everywhere. Emotional decisions often produce emotional consequences. A more relatable example: a woman who feels lonely may rush into a relationship with someone who is clearly incompatible. Her loneliness creates urgency, but months later she finds herself trapped in emotional turmoil because the decision was emotional, not intentional. Globally, emotional immaturity affects nations. Consider political movements driven by outrage rather than strategy. While anger can mobilize people, decisions made purely from emotional energy often fail to produce long-term solutions. Countries that have experienced sudden, emotion-driven transitions often struggle with stability afterward. Jakes insists that emotional maturity means being able to pause, process, reflect, and respond, not react. When emotions are settled, decisions become clear. And emotional maturity leads directly into the next necessary capacity, the ability to end what no longer aligns with your destiny. The courage to end what is no longer aligned. Many people fail not because of wrong beginnings, but because of an inability to create proper endings. Jakes argues that destiny is shaped as much by what you walk away from as by what you walk into. People lose years of potential because they stay in expired situations, relationships, jobs, friendships, projects, out of guilt, comfort, fear, or obligation. This lesson flows directly from emotional maturity. Immature emotions cling to what is familiar. Mature emotions courageously release what has expired. Jakes teaches that endings are a form of decision-making equal in importance as beginnings. You cannot make space for the next season of life while clinging to the past one. Ending something is not always a sign of failure. It is often a sign of growth. In America, consider the millions of professionals who remained in jobs that drained their health and purpose until the COVID-19 pandemic forced a global evaluation of priorities. The Great Resignation was not merely an economic event. It was a mass decision-making moment where people realized, I cannot remain where my soul is dying. They ended something to begin something more aligned. A powerful global example is in corporate leadership. When Satya Nadella became CEO of Microsoft, one of his first major decisions was to end certain internal rivalries, obsolete product lines, and toxic cultural patterns. This willingness to release what no longer worked led to one of the most successful corporate transformations of the 21st century. In personal relationships, this lesson is equally important. Sometimes a friendship that once nurtured you becomes harmful. Sometimes a relationship dynamic shifts and no longer supports growth. Sometimes a partnership no longer shares the same vision. Ending these connections requires courage, but stagnation is even more dangerous. Jakes teaches that everything in life has a season. Clinging to a season that is ended is a decision that delays destiny. Once a person learns to end what is misaligned, they become capable of making healthier decisions in the most sensitive area of life, relationships. Decision-making in relationships, choosing well and loving wisely. Relationships, Jakes argues, are where decision-making becomes most emotionally charged and spiritually significant. Who you love, who you trust, who you partner with, who you walk away from, and who you allow into your emotional space determines the quality of your life, more than almost any other category of decision. This lesson flows naturally from previous ones. Identity clarifies what kind of relationships you deserve. Filtering voices helps you choose the right people. Emotional maturity keeps you grounded,
and the courage to end misaligned relationships opens room for healthier ones. Jakes highlights several truths. 1. Compatibility matters more than chemistry. Chemistry creates excitement. Compatibility creates stability. 2. Loyalty cannot compensate for dysfunction. Staying with someone because of history is not the same as choosing someone because of destiny. 3. Love requires wisdom. Romantic feelings are not a substitute for emotional readiness or shared purpose. 4. A wrong relationship can sabotage a right destiny. Many people delay or abandon their potential because of relational entanglements. A modern American example is the increase in divorces after the pandemic lockdowns. Couples who were previously too busy to confront their differences were suddenly forced into proximity. Some realized they were mismatched in values, maturity, communication, or goals. The lockdown didn't create problems, it revealed them, and decisions had to be made. Globally, arranged marriages, extended family influence, cultural expectations, and economic pressures all shape relationship decisions. A person in India or Nigeria may choose a partner based on social norms rather than compatibility. Jakes argues that decisions made for the sake of pleasing others eventually produce inner conflict. Healthy relationship decisions require honest evaluation. Does this person support my growth? Do we share values? Can we communicate without fear? Does the relationship bring peace or chaos? Are we building a shared future or just surviving the present? Jakes insists that great relationships require intentional decisions, not emotional impulses. And strong relationships are essential because they influence the next major pillar of destiny, habits. Destiny is shaped by daily decisions, not big moments. People often imagine destiny as a dramatic moment, a big opportunity, a major breakthrough, a significant promotion. But Jakes teaches that destiny is actually shaped by thousands of small, consistent decisions over time. Success, character, emotional stability, and purpose are built through disciplined habits. This lesson flows naturally from relationship decisions because the people you connect with influence your habits, your thinking, your routines, your discipline, and your direction. Jakes argues that big decisions determine direction, but small decisions determine momentum. For instance, deciding to pursue a healthy lifestyle is a major decision, but the daily choices, exercise, meals, sleep, create the actual transformation. A powerful American example is the rise of athletes like Kobe Bryant, whose legendary Mamba mentality was built not on one major decision, but on thousands of small decisions. Waking up early, training harder than everyone else, studying opponents, and maintaining discipline. His greatness was not an event, it was a lifestyle.
This lesson flows from timing and character, because strong character helps regulate emotions, and good timing requires emotional steadiness. Decisions made in emotional extremes, anger, loneliness, desperation, excitement, jealousy, often end in regret. People frequently choose partners, resign from jobs, start arguments, spend money, relocate, or commit to obligations based on emotional highs or lows. But once the emotion fades, they are left with consequences. An American example is seen in the pattern of celebrities who marry emotionally but divorce quickly. The relationship begins with intensity but lacks the maturity necessary for sustainability. Hollywood is filled with such examples, but the principle applies everywhere. Emotional decisions often produce emotional consequences. A more relatable example. A woman who feels lonely may rush into a relationship with someone who is clearly incompatible. Her loneliness creates urgency. But months later, she finds herself trapped in emotional turmoil because the decision was emotional, not intentional. Globally, emotional immaturity affects nations. Consider political movements driven by outrage rather than strategy. While anger can mobilize people, decisions made purely from emotional energy often fail to produce long-term solutions.
Countries that have experienced sudden emotion-driven transitions often struggle with stability afterward. Jakes insists that emotional maturity means being able to pause, process, reflect, and respond, not react. When emotions are settled, decisions become clear. And emotional maturity leads directly into the next necessary capacity, the ability to end what no longer aligns with your destiny. The courage to end what is no longer aligned. Many people fail not because of wrong beginnings, but because of an inability to create proper endings. Jakes argues that destiny is shaped as much by what you walk away from as by what you walk into. People lose years of potential because they stay in expired situations, relationships, jobs, friendships, projects, out of guilt, comfort, fear, or obligation. This lesson flows directly from emotional maturity. Immature emotions cling to what is familiar. Mature emotions courageously release what has expired. Jakes teaches that endings are a form of decision-making equal in importance as beginnings. You cannot make space for the next season of life while clinging to the past one. Ending something is not always a sign of failure. It is often a sign of growth. In America, consider the millions of professionals who remained in jobs that drained their health and purpose until the COVID-19 pandemic forced a global evaluation of priorities. The Great Resignation was not merely an economic event. It was a mass decision-making moment where people realized, I cannot remain where my soul is dying. They ended something to begin something more aligned. A powerful global example is in corporate leadership. When Satya Nadella became CEO of Microsoft, one of his first major decisions was to end certain internal rivalries, obsolete product lines, and toxic cultural patterns. This willingness to release what no longer worked led to one of the most successful corporate transformations of the 21st century. In personal relationships, this lesson is equally important. Sometimes a friendship that once nurtured you becomes harmful. Sometimes a relationship dynamic shifts and no longer supports growth. Sometimes a partnership no longer shares the same vision. Ending these connections requires courage, but stagnation is even more dangerous. Jakes teaches that everything in life has a season. Clinging to a season that has ended is a decision that delays destiny. Once a person learns to end what is misaligned, they become capable of making healthier decisions in the most sensitive area of life, relationships. Relationships, Jakes argues, are where decision-making becomes most emotionally charged and spiritually significant. Who you love, who you trust, who you partner with, who you walk away from, and who you allow into your emotional space determines the quality of your life more than almost any other category of decision. This lesson flows naturally from previous ones. Identity clarifies what kind of relationships you deserve. Filtering voices helps you choose the right people. Emotional maturity keeps you grounded, and the courage to end misaligned relationships opens room for healthier ones. Jakes highlights several truths. 1. Compatibility matters more than chemistry. Chemistry creates excitement. Compatibility creates stability. 2. Loyalty cannot compensate for dysfunction. Staying with someone because of history is not the same as choosing someone because of destiny. 3. Love requires wisdom. Romantic feelings are not a substitute for emotional readiness or shared purpose. 4. A wrong relationship can sabotage a right destiny. Many people delay or abandon their potential because of relational entanglements. A modern American example is the increase in divorces after the pandemic lockdowns. Couples who were previously too busy to confront their differences were suddenly forced into proximity. Some realized they were mismatched in values, maturity, communication, or goals. The lockdown didn't create problems, it revealed them, and decisions had to be made. Globally,
Arranged marriages, extended family influence, cultural expectations, and economic pressures all shape relationship decisions. A person in India or Nigeria may choose a partner based on societal norms rather than compatibility. Jakes argues that decisions made for the sake of pleasing others eventually produce inner conflict. Healthy relationship decisions require honest evaluation. Does this person support my growth? Do we share values? Can we communicate without fear? Does the relationship bring peace or chaos? Are we building a shared future or just surviving the present? Jakes insists that great relationships require intentional decisions, not emotional impulses. And strong relationships are essential because they influence the next major pillar of destiny, habits. Destiny is shaped by daily decisions, not big moments. People often imagine destiny as a dramatic moment, a big opportunity, a major breakthrough, a significant promotion. But Jakes teaches that destiny is actually shaped by thousands of small, consistent decisions over time. Success, character, emotional stability, and purpose are built through disciplined habits. This lesson flows naturally from relationship decisions because the people you connect with influence your habits, your thinking, your routines, your discipline, and your direction. Jakes argues that big decisions determine direction, but small decisions determine momentum. For instance, deciding to pursue a healthy lifestyle is a major decision, but the daily choices, exercise, meals, sleep, create the actual transformation. A powerful American example is the rise of athletes like Kobe Bryant, whose legendary Mamba mentality was built not on one major decision, but on thousands of small decisions over time. Waking up early, training harder than everyone else, studying opponents, and maintaining discipline. His greatness was not an event, it was a lifestyle.
A global example is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the Nigerian author who built an international literary career not by waiting for inspiration, but through daily writing, reading, research, discipline, and craft. Her success is the sum of continuous habits. Jakes reminds readers that you cannot wish your way into destiny. You must decide your way into it. You must practice your way into it. You must be consistent enough for transformation to occur. And once habits are established, the next lesson emerges: commitment. The power of commitment in sustaining great decisions. Commitment is the glue that holds decisions together long enough to produce results. Many people start strong, but quit when the journey becomes inconvenient or slow. Jakes teaches that decision-making does not stop at choosing, it continues through perseverance. The earlier lessons, identity, discernment, counsel, emotional maturity, timing, and courage, culminate here. Without commitment, even the best decision collapses under pressure. For example, a marriage survives because both partners remain committed beyond emotions. A business grows because the founder stays committed through slow years. A degree is earned because the student remains committed despite stress. A calling is fulfilled because the individual refuses to quit. The American entertainment industry provides countless examples of commitment. Before he became an icon, Denzel Washington spent years taking small roles, studying acting, and remaining committed to excellence even when he wasn't getting major attention. His dedication distinguished his career from those who simply relied on raw talent. Globally, the rise of South Korea's tech and entertainment industries, K-pop, K-dramas, Samsung, Hyundai, did not happen in a decade. It took generations of national commitment to education, innovation, and excellence. Today, their industries dominate globally because their decisions were backed by long-term perseverance. Jakes insists that commitment must be directed toward the right things. You should not commit to what drains your soul or sabotages your purpose. But once you commit to what aligns with destiny, you must hold on with focus and discipline. Commitment ushers in the next major principle: resilience, the endurance required to sustain decisions through adversity. Every major decision will be tested. Jakes teaches that adversity does not indicate a wrong decision, it often confirms a right one.
Progress always provokes resistance. The moment you decide to grow, life will send challenges to verify your seriousness. This is why resilience is essential. Without resilience, discouragement becomes destructive. With resilience, challenges become training grounds. The connection to commitment is clear. Commitment initiates long-term focus, resilience protects it. A powerful example is J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter after facing poverty, depression, and rejection from multiple publishers. Her resilience transformed failure into a global empire that shaped literature and film. A global corporate example is Toyota, which after a series of recalls and production crises, rebuilt its reputation through resilience, improved manufacturing systems, and recommitment to excellence. In personal life, resilience shows up in continuing therapy even when healing feels slow, sticking to financial discipline despite setbacks, maintaining faith when prayers seem unanswered, rebuilding relationships after conflict, pursuing education despite age or obstacles. Jakes explains that resilience is spiritual. It is the inner strength to believe that destiny is still possible even when circumstances contradict it. And resilience naturally transitions into the next major lesson: gratitude and reflection. Every major decision requires a shift in how you see yourself because the future you're trying to reach demands a different version of you than the one that made the old decisions. T.D. Jakes insists that breakthroughs do not happen simply because we want them. They happen because we evolve into the kind of people who can steward the blessings we desire. You cannot make great decisions while holding on to small thinking. The mind that tolerates fear, excuses, and stagnant circles cannot birth destiny. And so every choice you make is simultaneously a declaration of who you believe you are capable of becoming. This is why one of the most powerful lessons Jakes teaches is that your decisions must grow out of your identity, not your insecurity. People who make decisions from insecurity tend to choose what is safe, but people who make decisions from identity, solid, grounded, purpose-based identity, choose what is aligned. And alignment always grants access to opportunities that fear would have disqualified you from. Consider the wave of young entrepreneurs across Africa and America, who in the last decade made bold decisions to build online businesses during economic downturns. Many of them had every reason to shrink. They were surrounded by recession news, rising inflation, and shrinking job markets. Yet grounded in a strong belief that the digital age was creating new opportunities, they made decisions rooted in identity. I am a builder. I am adaptable. I am capable of creating something new. That identity-driven confidence opened doors that playing it safe never would have. Some of these individuals eventually built companies that now employ dozens, even hundreds of people. The identity came first, the decision came next, the breakthrough followed. This leads to the next principle: decisions shape environments, and environments shape outcomes. According to Bishop Jakes, no matter how gifted you are, you cannot produce greatness in a place where your gifts are suffocated. You must be deliberate about the spaces you choose to occupy, because decisions become weak and timid when made in toxic environments. If you stay around people who belittle your dreams, you will eventually abandon them. If you remain in environments that celebrate stagnation, you will slowly normalize it. Your environment silently trains your ambition. Think of those who have migrated from one country to another in search of better opportunities. Many immigrants arrived in the US, Canada, the UK, or other nations with little more than determination and a dream. They made a decision: I must go where my potential has room to breathe. And once they entered empowering environments, places with better infrastructure, mentorship, education, and networks, they began to thrive. This is not because their abilities magically increased, but because decisions placed them in fertile soil. But the same story plays out globally on smaller scales, even within cities. A young software engineer in Lagos might decide to leave a stagnant work environment and join a fast-paced startup where innovation is valued. That decision can transform their career trajectory. Within a year, they might contribute to breakthrough products, attend conferences they once dreamed of, or secure an international remote role. An environment shift triggered by a single decision can accelerate destiny.
Yet Jakes warns that changing environments alone is not enough. You must also change your habits, because habits are the invisible architects of every decision you make. You cannot decide your way into a future you are unwilling to prepare for. Preparation and discipline are what make decisions sustainable. Without them, even the right choice can collapse. This is where many people fail. They make emotional decisions without structural follow-through. They decide to start a business but refuse to learn basic financial management. They choose to pursue a career upgrade but never invest in the discipline of studying, refining their skills, or networking. They pray for opportunities but ignore preparation. And as Bishop Jakes teaches, unprepared decisions lead to unnecessary frustration. Real life proves this over and over. Look at athletes in the NBA or the English Premier League. Talent alone did not take them to elite professional levels. It was the discipline of waking up early, staying consistent, following rigorous routines, and maintaining mental toughness. The decision to pursue greatness required the habits of greatness. The habits sustain the decision. In recent years, figures like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who began with almost nothing in Greece, demonstrate this perfectly. His initial decision was simply that he wanted a better life for his family. That choice drove him into years of relentless preparation. The result? NBA MVP, global influence, and generational transformation. The decision was big, but the discipline was bigger. This naturally leads to another lesson from Jakes. Great decisions demand clarity, and clarity demands separation. You cannot hear destiny clearly while drowning in noise. The noise might be internal, fear, anxiety, overthinking, or external, social pressure, family expectations, constant comparison. Without intentional separation from noise, people confuse impulses with instructions. Bishop Jakes argues that separation is not abandonment, it is alignment. Many people feel guilty when they step back from relationships, habits, or routines that suffocate their clarity. But separation is sometimes the very thing destiny requires. You cannot choose greatness while clinging to distractions. Look at global innovators like Steve Jobs or Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Both took significant seasons of separation. Jobs secluded himself during the creation of the early Apple designs, removing noise to focus on creativity. Chimamanda left law school and took time to write, think, breathe, and clarify her voice as a storyteller. Because they separated from noise, they birthed clarity, and clarity led to brilliance. This is why Jakes insists that you must decide not only what to pursue, but also what to surrender. People think decisions are only about choosing more. In reality, decisions often require choosing less distraction, less emotional clutter, fewer draining relationships, fewer meaningless pursuits. Without subtraction, there is no space for multiplication. Destiny does not operate in crowded rooms. When you look around the world today, it becomes obvious that the people who rise are those who master the art of intentional surrender. A young woman in Atlanta might decide to delete social media for 3 months to focus on building a digital marketing agency. A young man in Nairobi may choose to resign from a secure but suffocating job to pursue a tech certification that opens global opportunities. These decisions often look risky, even foolish, but they produce long-term clarity and power. From here, Jakes transitions into one of his most profound ideas. Every decision is a seed, and every seed produces a future version of you. You never escape the harvest of your decisions, good or bad. Even small decisions, repeated over time, have exponential impact. Many people underestimate the power of small choices, but life amplifies them. Take health decisions, for example. Someone may choose to exercise for just 20 minutes daily. That doesn't feel revolutionary, but over months and years, the benefits compound: better energy, improved mental clarity, reduced risk of major diseases. On the other hand, small decisions to indulge in bad eating habits or avoid routine checkups may eventually lead to major health crises. Finances work the same way. Consistent, disciplined decisions to save or invest, even modest amounts, compound into long-term wealth.
Many people across America and beyond reached financial stability not through one big decision, but through hundreds of small, consistent ones. Avoiding unnecessary debt, learning financial literacy, building emergency savings, and investing early. This principle leads to another. Decisions not only create futures, they create legacies. Bishop Jakes emphasizes that great decisions are never just about you. They ripple into generations. What you decide today determines the opportunities your children and grandchildren will inherit. This is evident across cultures and nations. Immigrant families who chose education and financial discipline often radically transformed the destinies of their descendants within 1 or 2 generations. Parents who were cleaners, taxi drivers, or factory workers in the US or Europe often raised children who became engineers, doctors, entrepreneurs, and innovators, because one generation made disciplined choices that the next could build on. Legacy-making decisions are rarely loud. They often look like choosing integrity when compromise seems easier, choosing humility when pride feels justified, choosing to stay faithful in marriage instead of giving in to temptation, choosing to plan financially instead of living recklessly, choosing to raise your children with wisdom instead of leaving them to chance. The world sees the results, but heaven sees the decisions. Another core teaching in making great decisions is that fear is the enemy of greatness, because it distorts perception. Fear makes small challenges look enormous. Fear magnifies what is uncertain and minimizes what is possible. Fear manufactures imaginary consequences that paralyze ambition. That is why many people never pursue what they truly want. They decide based on fear of failure, judgment, or discomfort. Fear told many during the pandemic that life was over, but some of the greatest innovations, businesses, and opportunities were birthed in that crisis. Those who stepped out found possibilities that fear tried to hide. Across America, Nigeria, Kenya, the UK, Brazil, and India and beyond, countless people started online coaching businesses, remote tech jobs, digital consultancies, e-commerce stores, and creative agencies simply because they made a decision to push through fear. Jakes teaches that fear is loud, but destiny is steady, and the only way to silence fear is movement. You cannot think your way out of fear, you must decide your way out of it. Action is fear's undoing. This flows into another profound truth. Great decisions require faith, not just spiritual faith, but the belief in possibilities not yet visible. Faith is seeing with inner eyes what your outer eyes cannot confirm. Faith is the engine of bold decisions.
Every major accomplishment in history required this type of faith. The founders of Google, Amazon, Tesla, Dangote Group, and SpaceX all operated with a level of faith. Faith in innovation, in market shifts, in human potential, in technology, in relevance. Even humanitarian giants like Nelson Mandela and Malala Yousafzai made world-changing decisions fueled by faith in justice and equality. Faith strengthens your decisions because it allows you to choose based on potential rather than limitation. Jakes then directs attention to timing. A great decision made at the wrong time becomes a bad decision. Timing is destiny's calendar. Many people miss opportunities not because they were wrong, but because they hesitated. Others fail because they rushed ahead without preparing properly. You must learn the rhythm of your own life. When to accelerate, when to pause, when to step out, when to wait, when to speak, when to stay silent. Wisdom is the ability to detect time-sensitive doors. Real examples? Tech investors who recognized the early rise of cryptocurrencies or artificial intelligence and acted at the right moment reaped massive rewards. Those who waited too long because of overthinking watched opportunities fade. Conversely, hundreds worldwide lost money because they rushed into hype-based investments without understanding the market. Correct decision, wrong timing. This brings us to the next idea. Great decisions must be holistic, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and practical. If any part of you is underdeveloped, your decisions become unbalanced. Emotionally unhealthy people make reactionary decisions. Intellectually lazy people make uninformed decisions. Spiritually disconnected people make misaligned decisions. Practically unprepared people make unrealistic decisions. A great decision requires your whole self. One of the things Jakes urges is to seek counsel, but not from just anyone. The wrong counsel can sabotage destiny. You should seek wisdom from those who have walked paths you admire, whose lives reflect stability and maturity. Decisions become easier when you learn from the mistakes and victories of others. This is why mentorship, whether digital or in person, has become a global force. People learning coding from remote mentors, entrepreneurship from digital creators, investment from financial educators, or personal development from authors and scholars are all leveraging counsel to refine decisions. The next principle is difficult but essential. You must take responsibility for your choices. Blame keeps you stuck. Excuses prolong stagnation. Responsibility activates transformation. When you accept that your life, good or bad, is the result of your decisions, you reclaim power. This is seen in the stories of countless people who turned their lives around after taking responsibility. Former addicts who chose rehabilitation, ex-convicts who chose education and rebuilt their lives, people who escaped poverty by taking ownership of their financial decisions. Responsibility is liberation. Finally, Jakes teaches that every great decision must ultimately align with purpose. If a decision brings money but steals peace, it is not aligned. If a decision brings applause but kills authenticity, it is not aligned. If a decision brings success but destroys relationships, it is not aligned. Purpose is the compass. Decisions are the steps. Destiny is the destination. Purpose is not merely an inspirational concept. It is a navigational instrument. In making great decisions, T.D. Jakes repeatedly emphasizes that your purpose is not random, and therefore your decisions cannot be random. Purpose provides direction, priority, and clarity. Without a sense of purpose, even intelligent people make foolish decisions because intelligence without direction becomes misapplied energy. This is why people with high potential often feel restless when their decisions are not aligned with purpose. The soul knows when it's living beneath its assignment. Jakes teaches that discomfort is often the signal that destiny is calling. When you begin feeling unusually uneasy in situations that once felt normal, it is often because your purpose is pulling you forward. This is why people outgrow jobs, relationships, habits, and even identities. Purpose creates a holy dissatisfaction with anything less than alignment. You see this in the lives of many who have undergone sudden career shifts that eventually became the best decisions of their lives. Consider the countless professionals globally who left careers in law, banking, or engineering to pursue creative paths, film, photography, fashion, writing, designing, because they discovered their deeper calling. Some of the biggest influencers in America today, from YouTube creators to tech startup founders, began in completely unrelated fields. Their pivot seemed unreasonable to many, but internally, it was the most reasonable decision they ever made. Purpose demanded a decision. A relatable example is Issa Rae. She started writing and creating videos long before the world knew her. At one point, she had to choose between a safe, predictable career and her creative calling. She chose purpose. That decision led to Insecure, global recognition, and a cultural impact that continues to create opportunities for underrepresented voices. Her success didn't start with talent. It started with a decision to follow purpose. Once you understand purpose, the next lesson becomes unavoidable. To make great decisions, you must confront your history but refuse to be confined by it. Many people sabotage their future because they have elevated their past to a position of authority. They allow old failures, past rejections, trauma, mistakes, or childhood limitations to dictate what they believe is possible. Jakes argues that while your past explains you, it must never define you. This is a universal truth. Across continents, people rise beyond circumstances because they refuse to allow history to become destiny. Think of Oprah Winfrey's journey from poverty and pain to global influence. Think of Nigerian musician Burna Boy, who was once criticized and underestimated, yet chose to push forward relentlessly, eventually earning global awards and recognition. Their past could have paralyzed them, but they made decisions that transcended their history.
Your history is a reference, not a prison. Decisions are the keys that open the door to new chapters. But Jakes also warns that you cannot make new decisions while clinging to old identities. You cannot step into abundance with a scarcity mindset. You cannot embrace healthy relationships while seeing yourself as unworthy. You cannot pursue leadership while believing you are destined to follow. This is why transformation always begins internally. Before you change your life, you must change the lens through which you see yourself. This leads to another core truth. You must decide to heal. Healing is a decision. Forgiveness is a decision. Letting go is a decision. Many people never walk into greatness because they have made peace with brokenness. They carry emotional wounds into decisions, and those wounds distort judgment. Jakes teaches that unhealed people make desperate decisions, defensive decisions, or destructive decisions.
Healing is not weakness. Healing is preparation. A healed mind makes wiser choices. A healed heart forms healthier relationships. A healed identity unlocks boldness. Examples of this abound. After the 2020 global pandemic and its emotional impact, many individuals worldwide decided to seek therapy, embrace mental health resources, mend family bonds, or redefine personal boundaries. This healing empowered countless people to make stronger life decisions, choosing healthier partners, leaving toxic friendships, pursuing careers that previously overwhelmed them, or starting businesses they once felt unworthy of attempting. Healing didn't just make them feel better, it made their decisions sharper. Once you begin healing, you naturally become capable of another critical step, the courage to make unpopular decisions. Jakes teaches that great decisions often defy public opinion because destiny assignments rarely fit societal expectations. The crowd loves conformity, but greatness requires distinction. If you make decisions to please everyone, you will eventually disappoint yourself. But if you make decisions that honor your calling, the right people will eventually support you. History celebrates those who chose truth over popularity. Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Greta Thunberg, Malala Yousafzai. Their decisions were unpopular at the beginning, but transformational in the end. Even in business, innovators like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, or Paystack founders Ezra Alubi and Shola Akinlade made decisions that many initially criticized or mocked, but the courage to stand alone made their impact possible. Your destiny may require decisions that others cannot understand because the vision was not given to them, it was given to you. But courage alone is not enough. Jakes emphasizes that great decisions require consistency. A moment of courage must become a lifestyle of commitment. Too many people begin boldly but quit prematurely. They make a powerful decision, step into the unknown, face early resistance, and then retreat. But destiny rewards consistency. Think of newly launched YouTube channels or TikTok creators today. Many people create content for 2 weeks, get discouraged by low views, and quit. Yet some of the biggest creators today posted for months, sometimes years, with minimal engagement before their breakthrough. Their decision wasn't a one-time event. It was a sustained commitment. Consistency transforms small decisions into monumental outcomes. Globally, athletes, musicians, activists, and entrepreneurs share the same story. The decision made on day 1 only mattered because they honored it on day 2, day 30, and day 3000. Consistency is the bridge between decision and destiny. The next major lesson Jakes explores is one that many overlook. You must decide whom to trust. Discernment is a decision. People can influence your path more than any other factor, so the people you trust are part of your destiny equation. Some relationships strengthen your wisdom, others weaken your judgment. Jakes warns that trusting the wrong people can destroy years of progress. Countless lives across the world have been derailed by misplaced trust.
business partnerships with unethical people, friendships with jealous hearts, romantic relationships with manipulative motives, collaborations with inconsistent individuals. But the opposite is also true. Trusting the right people can accelerate your journey. A single mentor, leader, friend, or partner can elevate your thinking and expand your opportunities. Many business owners owe their early breakthroughs to a single investor who believed in them. Many musicians and creators were elevated because someone trusted their talent and opened a door. Many students became global leaders because a teacher saw potential where others saw insignificance. Trust is a decision that must be made with heart and wisdom. This naturally brings us to another principle. You must decide what to prioritize. Decisions without priorities lead to scattered energy. You cannot do everything. You cannot chase every opportunity. You cannot please everyone. Jakes argues that clarity is born in prioritization. When you decide what matters most, everything else becomes easier to manage. In recent years, the global conversation around work-life balance has highlighted this truth. Professionals across America, Europe, Asia, and Africa have begun making tough decisions, quitting high-paying jobs but soul-crushing jobs, relocating to healthier environments, refusing toxic workplace cultures, or choosing family time over constant hustle. These choices are not acts of laziness, they are acts of wisdom. A meaningful life demands priorities. The next lesson is deeply practical. You must decide to plan. Great decisions require strategy. Passion without planning leads to chaos. Jakes teaches that planning is not the opposite of faith. It is the expression of faith. When you believe a great future is possible, you prepare for it. Planning transforms dreams into steps. Steps become habits. Habits become outcomes. This is why nations with strong development strategies grow steadily over time. This is why successful companies operate with systems, objectives, and benchmarks. This is why individuals who plan their finances, careers, and personal growth often achieve more consistency than those who live reactively. But Jakes also reminds us that plans must be flexible because destiny rarely moves in straight lines. You must plan with wisdom, but remain open to divine redirection. Sometimes the road changes not because you failed, but because something better awaits you. And this transitions beautifully into another vital truth. You must decide to innovate. The world evolves quickly. Yesterday's decisions cannot always solve today's problems. Innovation is not only for tech companies and creative industries, it is for anyone who wants to remain relevant. Whether you are a student, an entrepreneur, a parent, a leader, or simply a person seeking growth, your ability to adapt will determine your impact. Look at the global shift towards digital transformation. Schools moved online. Businesses embraced e-commerce. Churches streamed services. Individuals learned new digital skills. Those who innovated thrived. Those who resisted struggled. Innovation is a decision, and the future belongs to those willing to reinvent themselves. Jakes then presents one of his most transformational insights. You must decide what voice you will obey. Every decision is influenced by a voice. God's voice, your inner wisdom, the noise of culture, the opinions of others, or the whispers of fear. The voice you choose determines the future you create. You must choose the voice that speaks to your highest self, your deepest truth, your noblest purpose. Whether one frames it spiritually or practically, the concept remains the same. Destiny whispers, and only those who listen make the decisions that define greatness. This leads us towards the emotional heart of the book. Great decisions require great truth. You must be honest with yourself about your fears, desires, weaknesses, strengths, motivations, patterns, and goals. Many people make disastrous decisions because they hide from the truth. They deny their unhealthy habits, toxic relationships, or harmful tendencies. Greatness demands truth.
True self-awareness empowers strong decisions.
When you understand your patterns, you can disrupt them. When you understand your strengths, you can leverage them. When you understand your weaknesses, you can protect yourself. Global leaders and innovators often share one thing in common: radical self-awareness. They know what they are good at, what they need help with, when to push, and when to pause. They make decisions grounded in truth, not ego. Jakes then draws the journey toward culmination. You must decide to act. Analysis without action is paralysis. Potential without execution is wasted. Many people know what to do. Very few do it. Execution separates dreamers from doers. This principle echoes across the world. Millions have brilliant ideas, but only a small fraction act on them. The individuals who rise are often not the most talented. They are the most decisive. They take the risk of trying. They move even when they are afraid. They act before they feel ready. They refine as they go. Action creates momentum, and momentum creates miracles. Finally, Jakes emphasizes that every great decision will require resilience, because tests will always follow choices. The decision opens the door, but resilience keeps you walking through it. You must decide to keep going, even when circumstances shift, when plans fail, when people disappoint you, when progress slows. Resilience is the quiet force behind every success story. It is what allowed Elon Musk to continue after repeated rocket failures. It is what sustained Tyler Perry after years of rejection. It is what made Serena Williams one of the greatest athletes of all time. It is what keeps countless everyday people across the world overcoming hardship and creating beautiful futures. Resilience is the decision to not give up. And that is where the journey of great decision-making ultimately leads, to a life marked by intentionality, courage, truth, healing, strategy, adaptability, and purpose. It leads to a life where you no longer drift through circumstances, but direct them. It leads to a life where destiny becomes a partnership between your faith and your choices. Every truly great decision you will ever make ultimately leads you back to yourself. Your courage, your identity, your purpose, your discipline, your vision, and your willingness to evolve. In the final movement of Making Great Decisions, Bishop T.D. Jakes presses one unshakable truth into the reader's heart. You are responsible for shaping the life that God has placed in your hands. Destiny is not accidental. Greatness is not genetic. Transformation is not spontaneous. They are all outcomes of decisions, consistent, intentional, spiritually aligned decisions. This is why your life begins to change the moment you stop waiting for perfect conditions and start choosing perfect commitment. Jakes teaches that the world does not respond to potential, it responds to decisions. Potential is invisible until decisions give it form. And if your decisions remain timid, your potential remains imprisoned. This is why so many people at midlife, at 30, 40, 50, even 60, suddenly feel a deep, aching regret. It is not because they lacked dreams, but because they lacked decisive action. They postponed, hesitated, doubted, delayed, and rationalized. They allowed fear to steal decades. And then one day, they awaken and realize potential without decisions is simply wasted possibility. But Jakes refuses to let the reader stay in regret. He insists that it is never too late to start making great decisions. Age does not disqualify destiny. History proves this over and over. Ray Kroc was 52 when he turned McDonald's into a global empire. Vera Wang entered fashion at 40. Colonel Sanders franchised KFC at 62. Toni Morrison published her first novel at 39. Many Africans and African Americans launched impactful businesses after 40 because life experience sharpened their vision. Great decisions do not require youth. They require courage. This leads Jakes into one of his most critical lessons. You must make decisions based on where you are going, not where you have been. Greatness requires forward vision.
You cannot build a future while staring backward. A backward focus produces backward decisions. People who achieved remarkable things made choices that aligned with the future they desired, not the limitations of their past. Immigrants who arrived in new countries with minimal resources but worked tirelessly toward a vision are living proof of this. Many CEOs, founders, inventors, authors, and ministers testified that their childhoods did not predict their destiny, but their decisions did. Forward-looking decisions create upward-moving lives. Once you begin making decisions based on the future you envision, something powerful happens. Your decisions start attracting the people, opportunities, and resources that match your direction. Destiny responds to decisiveness. When you choose clarity, clarity chooses you. When you choose purpose, purpose reveals pathways. When you choose discipline, discipline opens doors. This is why people who become intentional suddenly experience momentum. It is not that life becomes easier, it is that their decisions become aligned. Energy flows where purpose goes. The universe, faith, strategy, and effort converge when your decisions stop contradicting your destiny. And this introduces one of the final transformative truths Jakes presents. You must give yourself permission to outgrow your former life. This is not abandonment, it is evolution. Growth feels like betrayal to those who benefited from your stagnation. Many people stay small because they fear the emotional consequences of becoming large. They fear being misunderstood, envied, judged, criticized, or isolated. But Jakes argues that every decision that elevates you will naturally isolate you from something or someone. Maturity means you must be willing to disappoint people who prefer your lesser self. This is visible in real-life stories across every continent. A young woman decides to leave an abusive relationship and begins rebuilding her life. Her circle shrinks, but her strength grows. A man leaves a group of friends who influence him negatively. His weekends become quieter, but his life becomes healthier. An entrepreneur chooses to stop entertaining people who drain their energy. Profit increases, stress decreases. Growth is often lonely at first, but glorious later. The next lesson flows naturally. Great decisions require boundaries. Boundaries are not barriers, they are protection. They guard your energy, your focus, your values, your vision, your peace. Without boundaries, even good opportunities can become distractions. People without boundaries are constantly pulled into other people's priorities and rarely achieve their own.
Jakes argues that setting boundaries is one of the most spiritual decisions you can make because it honors the assignment God placed on your life. Jesus had boundaries. Every global leader has boundaries. Every successful creator has boundaries. Without them, greatness leaks. This leads to another foundational truth. Every great decision will be tested by sacrifice. A decision that does not cost you anything will not change anything. Growth requires giving something up: time, comfort, old habits, familiar routines, unhealthy relationships, short-term pleasures. Success requires sacrifice. Excellence requires sacrifice. Healing requires sacrifice. Purpose requires sacrifice. Look at every major achievement in the world, from the construction of the pyramids to the birth of major tech companies. There were sleepless nights, uncomfortable seasons, difficult choices, and delayed gratification. Sacrifice is the currency of destiny. But sacrifice, when rooted in purpose, becomes sacred. Jakes insists that sacrifices made for destiny never return empty. They return multiplied. You cannot give your focus to your dream without reaping a harvest. You cannot give effort without receiving progress. You cannot give discipline without gaining mastery. Decisions backed by sacrifice generate exponential results. Then, in one of the most emotionally resonant parts of his teaching, Jakes introduces a truth many ignore. Great decisions require the willingness to grieve what must be left behind.
People often underestimate the emotional cost of growth. To step into a new season, you must acknowledge that an old season is ending. That ending may be painful. Even positive change requires grief. This is why transitions feel heavy. Graduating, relocating, leaving a job, ending a relationship, shifting careers, evolving spiritually. Even when you know it is right, you feel the weight of the familiar fading. Jakes tells readers to honor that grief. It is not weakness, it is humanity. Grief clears emotional space for new beginnings. This level of emotional maturity leads to an even higher principle. You must decide to steward your destiny, not sabotage it. Self-sabotage is real. Procrastination, self-doubt, perfectionism, emotional impulsivity, inconsistent discipline, negative self-talk, overcommitting, addiction to approval. Jakes insists that destiny cannot coexist with self-sabotage. You must confront it, uproot it, and replace it with intentional behaviors. This is where the integration of spiritual and practical wisdom shines. He teaches that prayer alone cannot override poor habits. Faith requires works. Vision requires structure. Calling requires character. Desire requires discipline. You must partner with your destiny through both prayer and practice. Once you begin actively stewarding your life, you unlock another dimension of decision-making, the ability to anticipate long-term impact. Great decision-makers think generationally. They consider how their choices will affect their future self, their family, their community, and even the world. You see this in individuals who choose to pursue education despite challenges. Their future children inherit a different narrative because of a decision made decades earlier. You see this in entrepreneurs who build sustainable businesses that employ communities. You see it in political leaders who choose unity over division, shaping national destinies. Long-term thinking strengthens decisions because it gives you a higher vantage point. You stop choosing what feels good now and start choosing what will bear fruit later. This elevates the final and perhaps most spiritually profound message of the book. Every decision becomes a divine partnership between your will and God's intention for your life. Jakes argues that destiny is not imposed on you. It is offered to you. It is a calling you must answer, a journey you must choose, a responsibility you must embrace. God gives vision, but you must give action. God gives potential, but you must give discipline. God gives opportunities, but you must give courage. God gives purpose, but you must give decisions. This divine human partnership is the foundation of greatness. It means you are never alone in your decisions. The wisdom, intuition, alignment, and courage you need are available if you seek them. You are not making decisions in the dark. You are making decisions guided by purpose, supported by grace, and strengthened by inner wisdom. Jakes closes the conceptual arc with a truth that sums up the entire journey. Your decisions today are creating the person you will meet tomorrow. Every choice forms a future version of you, stronger or weaker, clearer or more confused, freer or more entangled, aligned or misaligned. Your future self is waiting on the decisions your present self is afraid to make. And so, the final charge is simple but mighty. Choose boldly. Choose wisely. Choose purpose. Choose growth. Choose truth. Choose resilience. Choose responsibility. Choose faith. Choose your future. Your life will rise to the level of your decisions. If this message resonated with you, subscribe and join us for more wisdom that fuels growth.